Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for today's presentation of the 2026 Digital Landscape for HOA Management Companies, presented by myself, John Leutermann of Big Rock Marketing. And this is going to be the first of a series of 4 webinars that will be held on the same day and same time for the next 3 weeks after today. So the upcoming webinars are going to be on your Google business profile, AI and AI search results, and then your website. And so today we're going to kind of do an overview and talk about everything in general terms. And then we'll go into more specifics each week on the various aspects of digital marketing for HOA management companies. And just a couple of housekeeping things. So Brianna from the Big Rock marketing team is on the call. So if you have any technical issues at all, please type them into the chat and she will respond. Also, if you have any questions throughout, we will answer those at the end and she will collect those and ask the questions at the end. So feel free to type those in at any time. So I'm John Leutermann, president of Big Rock Marketing. I have over 15 years of digital marketing experience and have worked with many HOA management companies over the last 5 years and help management companies with their digital, all aspects of digital, including websites, SEO, AI search optimization, Google business profiles, paid ads. And so we have a team that works with management companies to help them grow their leads online and improve their overall digital presence. And so today we're going to talk about how the board member search has changed, how AI is changing the game, and how SEO still needs to be a focus, how CAM companies should handle reviews, and then we'll do the Q&A at the end. I just wanted to note, since we're going to be doing a series of 4, we're going to try to keep these webinars to 45 minutes or less. I know everyone's busy, so we'll try to keep them a little bit shorter, but try to fit in a lot of information. And of course, if you have questions throughout, please type them into the chat on the right and we'll answer them at the end. So why does this matter in 2026? So HOA board members are more digital savvy than ever before. And oftentimes their first impressions will happen before the first call. So before you ever get to speak to them or even know that they're interested in your company, they are already doing their research on you. And as competition keeps increasing in most markets from various factors, including private equity, it's all the more important to make sure that you are doing all the right things and everything that you possibly can to put yourself out there and make sure that you're as visible as possible to attract those board members. Referrals alone no longer close deals. Online presence directly impacts your win rate, and many CAM companies are falling behind purely because they don't have a strategy or they aren't doing much for their strategy. So the modern board member, I'm just going to kind of go through the mindset of the modern board member just so we understand how it is that they do their searches. And then we'll talk about what we can do to help with that. So they're volunteers, not professionals. Their time is often limited. They're often researching at nights and weekends. They have a heavy reliance on Google, and they're trust-driven decision makers, and they're risk-averse and comparison-focused. So when they're researching your company, most likely they're also researching your competitors. So it's really important that you take any advantage that you can to make your visibility and to make your presence appear as good as possible, since they're going to be directly comparing you to your competitors. So this is the typical board research journey. They receive a referral or recommendation, and then they would go to Google and do a search for your company name. They check out Google Maps and your reviews. Then they would look at your website. They would also compare you against your competitors at that point. And they come up with a short list of companies that they want to research a little bit more or to potentially talk to before ever reaching out to companies. And so I think it's important to understand that journey is that oftentimes before we even know that somebody has an interest, they already have made a decision about your company. It may not be the final decision, but they've already decided whether or not to contact you and whether or not they think that it's going to be a positive experience based on what they've seen online. So where they normally would start their search is Google search. And with Google search, we have to take a look to make sure that you are visible. And actually, at this point, we're going to stop and just have everyone answer a quick poll question. So is your business currently doing any sort of digital marketing or SEO to attract board members? So I'm going to give everyone a moment here to answer that question, and then we will move on. Okay, we'll just give everyone a few more seconds here. Okay, it looks like just about everyone has answered. And so this is a pretty even split. So about 40% of people are saying that they do digital marketing or SEO. Another 40% said that they aren't. And 20% said that they answered the question of what's that? So they aren't doing it and aren't really sure what it is. And so that's perfect for this webinar. So back to the slide. So where board members start their search is oftentimes a Google search or a Google Maps, and then they have a Google Maps result come up or AI search result come up. They'll also look at HOA Community Association websites, industry directories, potentially like the CAI website. They also might Google or use like ChatGPT to search best HOA management companies near me. And then the last bullet is just that oftentimes it is a mobile first experience. And so when I look at management companies' Google Analytics, I see that close to 50% of their website traffic is coming from mobile. And so that's super important to pay attention to, as many people who are developing a website or working on a website within management companies are doing it on a desktop. And so it's super important to also check the mobile version, because a good portion of your visitors will be searching for mobile, and things can definitely look quite a bit differently on mobile versus desktop. So what do board members look at first? They look for website professionalism and clarity before they even read any of the words on the page. They're specifically looking for HOA experience and language to make sure that your company is someone that they would want to do business with. They also are checking your online reviews and ratings. And, so Google's the biggest one, but there's also other sites that people are looking at, like the BBB or Yelp. They want to see that you have a local presence and that you are in proximity to where their community is. And so I think that this area is often overlooked by management companies. Oftentimes they don't have a service area map or a service area page that tells people where they do business. And so it just leaves people guessing. So that's something that we'll talk about later on. They're also looking for signs of credibility and longevity. So if you've been in business for 10 years or 20 years, it's definitely a great thing to mention that on your website as well, so that people know and they can feel that trust and security. And they also want to make sure that you have your services are clearly listed, and the expectations of what type of services you provide are listed within your website. And so after a referral happens, board members will Google your company. Then they'll scan your reviews quickly. Your website credibility will be quickly assessed, and then competitors are searched immediately. And then side-by-side comparisons begin. And so this is all within the matter of minutes. Decisions are often made silently. And so by that, I mean, they may judge you whether or not they've spoken to you or not. And so there's probably some referrals that you've received that you've never heard from, because something that they saw, they decided that you weren't the right decision, you weren't the right choice for them. And so by making improvements to all of your different digital aspects of your business, that can help with those things and help future outcomes. And so, what is a digital trust signal? And so that is super important, not only to prospective board members, but also to Google and AI search tools. They're looking for trust signals. And so some of those things are proof that you're real and established, proof that you specialize in HOAs, proof that others trust you, proof that you're active and current, proof that you're local, and signals that reduce perceived risk. And so I know those are kind of generic, so I'm going to give you examples of each one of those. So proof that you're real and established would be having a nice looking website that is well built out and provides all the information that a prospective board member would need to make an educated decision. Proof that you specialize in HOAs. So for this, I always recommend that for each type of community that you manage. So like, for example, if you manage condos, townhouses, gated communities, 50 plus communities, that you have a page dedicated to each one of those types of communities, so that when someone comes there, regardless of what type of community they live in, they see a page that speaks exactly to them. Proof that others trust you. So that could be done on your website and off. So off of your website would be the reviews, and on your website would be some testimonials. And what I like to do is pull in Google reviews. So there's widgets that can be used to pull in Google reviews directly to your website, and that will auto update. So when new reviews come in, they'll automatically get pulled in to your website. There's also a way to filter them so that you don't show, like, let's say 1, 2, and 3 star reviews, so that they only see the 4 and 5 star. So that also helps. Proof that you're active and current, and so that would be updating your website. If you have a blog section or resource section, when were those published? Have you done anything in the last couple of years, in the last couple of months? Making sure that the information is up to date. Proof that you're local. An example of this would be service area pages, or a service area page that talks about all the communities that you can help and all the communities that you serve. And then signals that reduce perceived risk. So if you're a member of the CAI, make sure to have that logo on your website. If you're an accredited BBB business, make sure to have that logo on your website. So any sort of trust signals that you can think of would be super helpful. If you've won any awards in the past, those are great to include on your website as well. And so trust signal number 1 is your Google business profile. And so about 30% of management companies' leads can come from their Google business profile if it's optimized. So spending time and effort on the Google business profile is huge. And the things that you want to look at are making sure that your business information is accurate. And Google likes to automatically update services and categories on your profile and not notify businesses about it. And so with the companies we work with, we go in on a monthly basis to make sure that if they've done that we can clean it up right away. But they like to add things based on things they've seen on your site and other sites. So just to give an example, so if you're hiring for a certain position and you've got it listed on your website, and you say that you're going to do a background check, I've seen it where they'll add background checks as one of the services that you provide. And so it was just an error on their part. They just pulled in that information. It's not that your company provides background checks as a standalone service. It's just that you had that listed for an employee that you'd be hiring. And so it's super important to just take a look. Probably a monthly basis is a good amount of time. And then correct any sort of service categories that might be outdated or incorrect. And make sure that you have HOA focused service descriptions, not just generic descriptions. Adding regular photos and updates is important for your profile. Having consistent activity signals, and so that could be either Google posts or just continuous updates to the profile. And then strong maps visibility, which comes from all of the things mentioned above, and also your website as well, helps control where you show up in Google Maps results. And we're going to take another poll now. So if everyone could also answer this poll, when is the last time you've updated your website? We'll give everyone a couple of minutes here to answer. All right, looks like most everyone has answered. And so the results are 20% said that they updated their website in the last week, which is great. 40% said in the last month, which is also very good. 20% in the last year, and 20% said I have no idea. So that just kind of goes, and that's typical of what I see when I talk with management company executives and owners. Is that there's kind of a mixture. Some people are on top of it, and other times the website gets built, and then not much is done after that. And so I think it's definitely important, and that brings us to trust signal number two, which is an HOA focused website with content. And so you want to speak directly to board member concerns, explain your processes clearly, show HOA specific expertise. And so building out those pages for each type of community that you manage is a great way to demonstrate the expertise. Highlight your communication and reporting. And so I always tell people, if someone asks you why should we use your company and not the company down the street, the answer to that question you should make sure that that answer comes out in the content on your website. And if some of your advantages are the technology that you've paid for or the processes that your team uses, make sure that that's also communicated on your website. Make sure that your website's easy to navigate and understand, and one that quickly builds confidence. People have a very short attention span, so if you don't catch them quickly, they will leave. Trust signal number three, reviews that tell a story. So HOA specific language matters. And so I know that this is kind of tricky because when somebody leaves a review, um, you don't necessarily have control of what they're going to say. But most management companies that have a ton of reviews and have really high scores have an internal strategy to request reviews and to give people a little bit of a nudge. And so a great way to ask for reviews is to ask board members, homeowners, and vendors when they're happy with your company, when you've done something to help them. That's a great time to ask, and you can just give them a little bit of a gentle nudge by saying like, "Hey, would you mind talking about this that just happened?" Just so that other people can see that we were able to help you with that, and just so that they put the right keywords in there. Um, Also, recent reviews carry more weight, so that's even more important to have recent reviews as well as consistent reviews. And so I've seen some companies where they'll do an internal push and they'll say, okay, everybody needs to ask all their contacts for reviews, and they'll get 10 in a month and then none for the next 3 months. Well, Google will devalue some of those reviews because they know that something was up. All right, so it's better to do a small gradual amount of reviews over time than to get a whole bunch all at once. And then also your responses, make sure that the person writing the responses is professional in the way they handle things. Oftentimes, if there was a bad situation that you got a negative review for, it can be personal and people can be emotional about it. So sometimes it's best to have, if that was the case, to have somebody who wasn't involved write the response. And I always tell people, when you're writing a response to a negative review, you're not actually writing it to that person who wrote the review. You're writing it to for the next 10 people who are going to read that review and see how you handle the situation. So just keep that in mind. You can explain your side of the story, but it's good not to blame, or you don't even have to give super detailed information. But just remain professional and write the response to the person. Also, quality is better than quantity. So um, I know some management companies will do some internal contests to try to get reviews and things like that. It is better to try and have quality reviews than quantity. So if you're just going for numbers, that's probably not the right approach. Having people write details about their experience with you is better. And then also reviews influence shortlisting. So when board members are coming up with a list of people to potentially reach out to, your reviews definitely will influence their decision. So trust signal number 4 is local authority. So you want to have strong visibility in local searches. So when board members are searching for HOA management near me or HOA management in this particular city, you want to make sure that you show up in those searches. And so that will all the things we're talking about today will help with that. And also the other topics that we're going to cover in depth in the next 3 webinars will also help with that as well. But one of the things for local authority is the location specific service area pages, and also prove that you have market familiarity by writing about those service areas as well. If you do any sort of community involvement, having a page or weaving that information into your existing content will be helpful. That signals that you are a local company and not a huge national brand. And then you want to make sure that your messaging is consistent in your geographic area so that you don't confuse people. And then also your maps ranking as well, similar to the first bullet, also reinforce your credibility. And so what are some of the most common mistakes that we see in the HOA management industry? So generic messaging is mistake number 1. So just having general information about your business and not specifically talking to how you can help HOA board members, having content that is nearly identical to your competitors, and missing the emotional pain points. So oftentimes when someone is looking for a new management company, it's because they had a bad experience, communication was poor, the follow-up was poor. So if your company excels at that, make sure to put that in your content so that people can be aware of that before they would consider whether or not to reach out to you. Make sure that you differentiate your services. So if there's anything that stands out from your company from the next one, if you have technology that your competitors don't, or if your team, let's say your managers have a low low number of communities that they manage, but that all the other competitors from town are managing quite a bit more. Make sure that you mention that as one of the reasons why people should work with you. And then a lot of websites just have a low connection with boards in their content. They don't really even speak to them at all. So definitely customizing your content to your audience is super helpful. Mistake number 2 is ignoring reviews. And so you've probably noticed that I've mentioned reviews a few times today because of how important they are. Unfortunately, this industry, you guys get beat up on reviews quite a bit. You in general get negative reviews because of rules that you didn't create but you were required to enforce. And so the average management company probably has a 3-star review, a 3-star rating with Google. So the way around that is bullet point number 1, which is proactive review generation strategy. And so, like I mentioned earlier, when your team is working with either a board member, a homeowner, or a vendor, and they've had a positive experience with your company, that is the perfect time to ask them to leave a review. People are far more likely to leave a review if asked in person or asked while on the phone during a conversation versus like getting an email days or hours later. Those are you'll get some reviews from those, but it's much better to do it right on the spot. So only reacting when issues arise. So in that, I would respond to all reviews, whether they're positive or negative. If they're positive, then you can just thank the person and tell them that you like working with them. Low review volume hurts credibility. I think people assume that if you only have a few reviews, that you must not be a very big company and that you can't handle a ton of work. And so you want to make sure that you have a high number of reviews as well. Lack of responses could be a signal that if you can't respond to your Google reviews, how could you respond to our homeowners' needs? Um, so just it's that's a quick, easy win by having somebody in your office assigned to responding to the Google reviews. Um, so ignoring reviews is also a an opportunity to build trust, and they definitely need to be managed by somebody in your office. And so I can't stress enough how important reviews are, especially Google reviews, but also other sites such as the BBB and Yelp. Mistake number 3, this is one of the big ones. I would say 80% of the management websites I look at probably fall into this category, where they have a design that feels old or neglected. You can tell they haven't updated it. Oftentimes, the copyright in the footer is from a few years ago. There could be poor mobile usability, so it looks okay on desktop, but it doesn't look so great on mobile. Sometimes the websites will load slow, so it takes a really long time. People are very impatient, so they will leave if it takes a long time for the website to load. There's no clear calls to action, and so you definitely want to have navigation on your website that directs people to where you want them to go. And so the kind of the tricky thing is that 90% plus of your traffic is going to be homeowners. Um, and 10% is going to be prospective board members. And so you have to take care of both of those customers, right? Um, so a great way to do this is by having main menu that clearly directs people. So there could be a homeowners tab where everything that a homeowner would need, any sort of portal links, any sort of if it's pool card requests, anything like that is all in one place so that they know to go there. And then you can also have a board member one or a services one, so that will imply that those are the kind of services that you can provide. Um, and then a lot of times some of the websites I've seen have very limited HOA specific content. So they talk about what they do, but they never actually mention HOA management. And so sometimes it can take a while for someone to realize that that's actually the service that is being provided. And then also just weak first impressions, blurry images. Um, there's sometimes I've seen content that's kind of partially covered by images, or just a bad overall look and feel on the website. And then mistake number 4 is no local SEO strategy. So it's very tough, especially in more competitive markets. It's very tough to just show up just by throwing a website out there. It does take a coordinated effort to show up in local search these days. Many companies are investing in this, and so it's becoming tougher and tougher every single year. Um, so by no local SEO strategy, you would probably have limited visibility in Google Maps. You'd be missing location specific pages. You wouldn't have localized content, um, weak geographic relevance signals, and then your competitors would be doing much better on their websites, and also missing local opportunities. So local SEO and website optimization is super important for an HOA management company. And then mistake number 5 is the set it and forget it marketing. So a lot of times what I'll see is that someone had a website rebuilt a few years ago and just hasn't done anything since then. Um, but then going beyond that, they have marketing initiatives that aren't actively managed. So they're just kind of leaving it up to chance. No performance tracking or KPIs. And so the best example of that is not having Google Analytics on your website. So having no idea who's visited your website, what pages they visited, if anyone has visited, and then also tracking leads. So either leads that come through the form of your website or phone calls that come in. And so um, there are various software tools that can help track forms to see where they came from. And also the most simplest way is to have a question on the form that says, how did you hear about us? And then also when people are answering the phones, to ask them, can I ask how did you hear about us? Just so that you can track where your leads are coming from. If the content is becoming outdated, if you're talking about things that were important a few years ago but no longer are, people will be able to see that pretty quickly. Ignoring algorithm and platform changes. And so that covers a lot of ground. But for example, one of the more recent things is schema markup, especially for AI search tools. Having schema markup on the back end of your website is super important, so that those tools can understand your website. And there's also something called an LLMS.txt file, which tells the large language models, AI search tools, which pages you have on your website to make sure that they come and crawl all of them. And then it would be a gradual loss of visibility. I often hear, oh yeah, we used to get a lot of leads from our website, but they slowly dwindled and we hardly get any anymore. And so with the set it and forget it marketing mindset, that's what will happen. And then also declining results over time. So what do winning CAM companies do? They prioritize local visibility consistently. Their websites speak directly to the boards, to board members. They actively manage their reviews and reputations. They keep their digital assets like website content, Google business profiles current. They track their performance and adapt if they're seeing that something isn't working. And they treat marketing as an ongoing effort. And so, in summary, HOA boards are going to research your company digitally before making contact. So it's really important that you have every potential way that someone could see you online is up to date and fully optimized. So the big ones are going to be your website and also your Google business profile, but also any sort of profiles that you have on any sites. Referrals now require online validation to build confidence. So I think a lot of businesses have sort of relied on referrals, and referrals are still a great source of leads. But just know that those people are now going online to validate you before they would reach out. So Google reviews and websites shape first impressions. So first impression is everything. So what is it that people are seeing before they ever speak to you? Digital trust signals reduce perceived risk for boards. So anything that you can do to add trust to your website, whether it's adding that you've been in business for 20 years, putting the CAI logo, having the BBB accredited logo, those are all things that will help reduce risk and add trust to your website. Local visibility and HOA specific messaging matters most. So making sure that your website speaks to your potential customers. Many CAM companies are losing opportunities silently. So there's things that you'll never know, you'll never hear from those people. And small improvements can create a major competitive advantage. So it is a lot of work to do all of these things, but just small improvements gradually over time will help create a major competitive advantage. And I would encourage everyone to kind of take a look at their competitors' websites to see, okay, what are we missing? What are they doing? What are they doing better than us? What can we do to improve our website? That's often a great way to sort of know what are the strategies that you should be employing. And so I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And as I mentioned before, we are going to be doing this for the next 3 Tuesdays at the same time. So February 17th, we will be doing winning local search and Google business profiles in 2026. So we're going to do a deep dive into your Google business profiles and how to optimize them fully. And then on February 24th, we're going to talk about how to stay ahead of the AI search curve. So we're going to talk about specific strategies for AI search and how to implement those for your business. And then on March 3rd, we'll be talking about your website more in depth. So your website is your best salesperson if it's built for HOA boards. And so once you've signed up for this webinar, you are actually signed up for all the rest of them as well, and you will get the reminders. So we hope to see everyone on those as well. And so I wanted to mention that if anyone would like a free website and AI review for your business, that you can go to the Big Rock website, so Big Rock Online /webinar, and sign up. And I will personally take a look at your website and give you recommendations on what could be improved and how you can improve your performance. Also, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. That's my cell phone there and my email address, and also the Big Rock website. So now we're going to kick it over to Q&A time. So if anyone has any questions, please type them into the chat now. Okay, Brianna, do you have any questions?
Yes. So, one question that someone asked is, what is the single most important digital improvement an HOA management company should make right now?
That's a great question. So the single improvement would be making sure that your website is as good or better than all of your competitors. And so in the final webinar of the series, we will dive deep into that. But for now, it would be taking a look at your website and just with an honest set of eyes, taking a look and saying, what are competitors doing better than us? What are we doing better than competitors? Is there anything we can do to improve? And do we have pages built out for each of the type of communities that we manage? Do we have pages built out for each of the major each of the major cities that we manage communities in, or target communities, target cities that we want to manage communities in, just so that you send the signals to both board members and to Google to know, so that they know where you conduct business and what type of communities that you manage. So your website is probably the most important thing as far as digital assets.
Okay, great. And another question is, how many reviews does an HOA management company really need to be competitive in their market?
That is a good question as well. So the answer to that is going to depend on your market. And so really, it's probably not about a specific number, and it's more of an improvement from where you are currently. And so a good way to start is to look at your competitors and see how many reviews they have and what score they have, and then kind of shoot for that. Now, if you look at a competitor and they have 600 reviews and you have 20, that's going to take a long time. But um, I think the most important thing is gradual improvement. And so I wouldn't focus so much on the numbers as I would making sure that, in 3 months from now and 6 months from now and in a year from now, you're in a better place than you are today. Because velocity of reviews does help. And so, and the gradual addition of reviews helps. And so especially if the reviews, if previously the reviews coming in were just ones that naturally came in, people are 20 times more likely to complain than they are to compliment. And so if you can put a process in place internally to get reviews, I would think the majority of those will be 4 or 5 star reviews. And so just putting something in place to capture the happy people when when you're aware of them, will help improve your online reviews.
All right. And another person asked, if a company is referral based and already busy, why should they still invest in digital marketing?
Good question. Good question. Yeah, I think I kind of covered this in the presentation today, but the main reason is that even referrals are going to check you out online. They're going to look at your website. They're going to look at your Google Business profile, and so anything you can do to leave a positive impression will be will help them make their decision, and will just reinforce the referral that they were given. And so I would highly suggest investing in making sure your website is in the best shape that it can be, making sure that your Google Business profile is as good as it can be, and those things will definitely um, help even people who have been referred to you, just to help secure that lead and help you generate other business as well.
Okay. And then one more question that I see is how long does it realistically take to see results from local SEO?
Well, that's a good question. I don't like saying it depends because that doesn't really help. But I will say that it probably does depend a little bit on how fast you're making improvements. But if you start to add the pages that I had mentioned in the presentation, you can start to see results pretty quickly. I think the generic answer that I normally give is 3 to 6 months, but I have seen when you start to add new pages to your website, those can have an impact within the next month. And so now, if you're only adding 2 pages now and 2 pages a couple months from now, you know, all those pages and all the efforts that you're putting in will eventually have a bigger and bigger impact. But it's the speed at which you start to do the work will have the biggest bearing on how fast the SEO is working for you. Um, yeah, I think, and especially with your Google Business Profile, those changes are pretty quick, like within a couple of days. So if you make optimizations to your Google Business Profile, those start to have an impact much sooner. Where website changes, there's a little bit more of a delay, but it happens fairly quickly as well. So it really is going to depend on how much effort you're putting in, and how consistent you are with your effort, as far as how quickly you'll start to see results. Was there any other questions at all?
If anyone else has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat.
All right, it looks like there are no other questions. So thank you everyone for joining us today. I look forward to seeing everyone over the next 3 Tuesdays. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And thank you so much for your time.